Wow, I totally just spaced how to say hello in French. Bonjour. Bonjour, mes amis. Yeah, no, I ruined it. All right, welcome back to .NET API Review. We have basically exactly a screen of issues, but maybe only going to try talking about one today because, you know, there aren't very many people up there. Um, let's see what we do. All right, first up, .NET Extensions 6940 expose HTTP route formatter and HTTP route parser. Vito, you're up.
Yes, so this one actually exposes a few internal classes that are responsible for parsing the HTTP route templates and actually extracting parameters from them. So HTTP paths usually contain dynamic IDs that can show up in logs, metrics, traces, cache keys, or policy checks. These IDs can be sensitive. But today, if you want a clean, stable, privacy-aware version of a request path, you either need to pull the full ASP.NET Core routing stack or write your own parsing and masking code. And our existing internal HTTP router parser and formatter already solve this issue. The parser turns a route template into immutable segments and an optional default and catch all pieces, which is a wildcard parameters. And the formatter rebuilds the actual path into a canonical form, applying function rules using mm, our project-wide data classification and the reductor provider. And so by making them public, I think you can highly benefit from it by allowing customers to just reuse this logic, right? So internal implementation actually relies on the interfaces. So one thing that's changed here is that we're gonna use the abstract classes, mostly because we already use caches for all the template routes, and they're quite useful for a hot pass, and they're quite optimized, I'll say, and we can actually use that. And so let's go for a type by type breakdown. So first of all is a segment.
Can I
And
can I just ask a high level question? So
yes,
we're exposing this. You said the concern is people taking a dependency on the ASP.NET stack for the equivalent. ASP.NET already has this support exposed. Uh, and like, what would be the relationship between these if this is public? Will the ASP.NET one depend on this instead, or help me understand?
oh, okay. So this one is a bit complicated. So last time I checked when was originally creating this proposal, it was last October, I think. I think it's not possible right now to just get, let's say, to put a row template and get just a redacted string out of it, which we can use in a logs or a metrics. So there is no just a simple method call that will return you these this kind of strings or just structured structured segments.
So, yeah, I was gonna ask a similar question to Tobe. I think you're right that route patterns aren't the most convenient to use outside of use routing middleware. Um, because it has complicated DFA matcher logic and stuff that isn't all super well exposed and it's optimized for just the routing middleware. But looking at this looks a lot like route pattern. So it does make me wonder, can we make route pattern better? What's the reason? Is taking an ASP.NET Core framework dependency an absolute no-go? Is that basically it?
I mean, I can understand this library not taking a dependency, but this support is already, my understanding is this support's already there as internal implementation detail. My concern is more exposing another version publicly of ASP.NET things, and for the people that would depend on this support from this library, why couldn't they use the ASP.NET support basically?
Basically, yeah, and I hear your point. If there's a good way to extract the logic so that you don't need an ASP.NET Core dependency to use the core routing feature, that'd be nice. But yeah, I don't want separated logic for um
Yeah,
at least the extract parameters bit. I don't know if there's an equivalent. I mean, there's also, I mean, yeah. there's also a little bit of the equivalent to the format too, because we use it for link generation. So yeah, it'd be nice not to duplicate that.
Okay, so I'm not quite sure how you should proceed with that one. So I think it can be beneficial in the environments that doesn't specifically have the ASP.NET Core dependency, so maybe they have something else.
Do we have such people asking for this?
It'd be nice in the MCP SDK, maybe. Well, not exactly, because we need to use URI templates, not the ASP.NET Core version. But yeah.
I mean, so first of all, there's someone that is interested in this proposal because they have posted a reaction for it, but it's also is beneficial for the internal teams.
That are not using ASP.NET.
Oh yes.
Is there a way we could instead factor out ASP.NET's support into something that ASP.NET uses and that's also public? I just
That'd be my preference.
I just
Yeah.
bristle at the idea of two different sets of APIs that serve the same purpose, that involve non-trivial parsing, that need to really agree but likely won't for corner cases. That one is better than two. So is there any way we can get to one? Basically, is the question.
So in my view, I like to think of it as like the core usage for it is for when you want to write any kind of telemetry, and for that you need a reduction and the whole parser part is specifically useful for the reduction itself. So I'm thinking on it as for a way to work with route templates and apply all the reduction when you want to use it in the telemetry.
Is there also a formatting component to this then? Because to use it in redaction,
Yes.
you would need.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. I mean, it has both parser and a formatter. And the reduction for it, like reduction option settings are already public, so everyone can pass the reduction mode to it, which is available like in the project itself. So
Is the parser identical to the parsing that ASP.NET does?
No, like, so one interesting thing is, like, I'm looking through our link generator and our routing stuff, and like ASP.NET Core does like kind of bake the HTTP context into the abstraction. It's important if you want to like route based on the host header, right? Or things that aren't strictly part of the request path / maybe query string that you shouldn't route on query string. So there, that by itself, like the fact that this removes HTTP context entirely, does make it different. And I think the layering is going to be hard. Like if you were to layer it, you'd want to layer the HTTP context stuff on top of this, but then you need like a bunch of pluggability so you could add those constraints. I mean, it would be nice to have like a more generic concept of a constraint that maybe allowed you to like pass through an object and a callback or something. Like I hear your point. Like it's just not probably trivial to layer it, but it would be nice to reuse the logic as much as possible.
All right. Well, why don't we keep going through the APIs, and we can revisit the reason to exist.
okay, so the first part of it is a struct, and it represents either a literal or a parameter segment in a row template. So let's say, oh sorry, we get this on the table. Yeah, right. So let's say we have a template like /API/user /user ID as a parameter and /orders. And that will have 3 segments. So the literal is going to be API/users and parameter user ID, and the literal /orders, which is in the end. So segment, it has multiple parameters. So the first one is a start. It means the start index in the normalized template where the segment begins, and means the end of this end index exclusively. And in the normalized template. The content for literals is going to be the literal text. For parameters, is going to be the raw parameter content without braces. It's going to take a value, and then the bool parameter that indicates whether the segment is parameter or not. And then we'll have a param name. It's going to be stripped out of question mark, double columns, equal signs, wildcards, and it will be empty if it's not a parameter. And also, it can have a default value. If a template specifies one with equal sign, otherwise it's going to be empty. And is catch all parameter. It's going to be true if parameter uses a wildcard sign, or if it uses a double wildcards. Meaning it matches everything, including slashes. And that's all for the segment. And then we'll have the parsed route segments. This one is immutable parsed representation of a row template. So we parse a template once, we get these parsed route segments back, and then we can reuse it across many different requests. So it takes a route template, and this one is a normalized template and leading stretch primitive configured. It has, as a property, it has a route template, it has segments, which is of type of I read-only list of segments, and it has ordered segments, literal, and parameters interleaved. Read-only, so we keep it read-only, so external code can contain the cached results. And also it has a parameters count, it just indicates how many parameters, how many segments are parameters. But that's going to include the optional and the wildcard ones. And that one's parameter count is used so we can allocate a buffer in the right side so we don't over allocate. Then we have a struct for the HTTP route parameter. This one is an extracted parameter value plus reduction metadata. This is what we get back when we run a real request pass through the parser. And it has a name, which is a parameter name from the template, it has a value, and it's going to have the original or redacted value. If the parameter was optional and omitted from the path, it's going to use the template's default value or just empty. And then we have the isRedacted field, which is going to indicate whether it was redacted. Okay, and now to the parser itself. So internally it was an interface, but it's going to be an abstract class because it has a lot of optimization and caching, and we want to keep that because we don't want the customers to reinvent the wheel. And this class itself is going to parse the route templates and extract optional redacted parameter values from concrete paths. So it has a parse route method. It takes a route template string. It returns immutable parse segments. Results are cached per template string. First call is getting parsed. All other calls are getting just returned from the cached results. And the second method that it has is a try extract parameters. It takes a real request path, pre-parse segments, a reduction mode, and additionally a dictionary of which parameters to reduct default classification and a color provided array. Practically it fills the array with extracted parameters or returns false if the buffer is too small. So parameters itself, it has a HTTP path. That's going to be the actual request path, for example, /API/user/123. And then it has a route segments, and usually it's a result from a parse route method, and then a reduction mode, which can be strict, loose, or none.
Before we move on to the formatting, could we talk about all the parsing stuff?
Oh yeah, sure.
I have a variety of questions. So maybe just because it's on the screen, try extract parameters. Why is HTTP route parameters being passed by ref?
HTTP route parameters because so this one is an array that customer has to provide. So in that way, we don't allocate anything by ourselves. So maybe it needs a better name. So practically, it's a color provided.
Right. So
yes.
why is it ref? That ref suggests that try extract parameters implementation is going to write to that parameter, not to the indices, not to the elements in the array, but the actual variable.
Yes. It writes in this variable in the HTTP route parameter. It just fills it with a parameter.
No. If the ref weren't there, the implementation could still write into the array. It could still fill the array. having ref there suggests it's going to create a new array and assign it back to the caller's variable.
Maybe we can drop that. So I don't have a hard stance and keep it as a ref. So I mean, it is ref right now, technically. I think there is just some optimization to it.
Well, like you said, it returns false if the route parameters array isn't big enough to hold all the values, which the only reason it would be ref is if it was going to itself grow the array if it was too small. So if it doesn't do that, then it shouldn't be ref.
This also kind of gets to, does this return false for any other reason than the thing being small? But yeah, I'm looking at the implementation. It doesn't need to be ref.
I don't think that it. Oh, just a second. I just check it myself. Yes. I don't see any for now. But
I see,
yeah,
because parse route would fail if anything was going to fail, or no?
yeah. So that's the
maybe
only case when it's gonna return false.
Could you have a path that doesn't like match the route? Like what happens?
I think it won't be able to match the parameters to the template. Because it matches the parameters and it needs to match the data classification. So it can have the correct classification.
Wait, how do you, so there's no way to tell if the route matches the path?
So it checks by the just a second. Parameter value. I don't see any specific check, but so
Like in some
So
scenarios, you
it
might
just
already know
gonna
it matches, but yeah, it does seem odd.
yeah. So it checks specifically whether the HTTP path is if we exceed the length of a HTTP path, it means that the appropriate HTTP route has optional parameters or parameters with default values. And it's just gonna omit the parameters in the HTTP path.
And it seems like it's just like filling in the parameters from the start, but it might like partially fill the array. Is that, am I wrong?
Looking at it, I think you can. At least I don't see like a big part when it just when it compares when it confirms that they are path and but wait, it just has a yes, so it just has a path, right?
Sorry,
Yeah.
Jeremy. I dropped in the link of like what I'm looking at right now, maybe if people are trying to follow along. But like, yeah, I think refing is like an obvious thing to fix. I think we should also think about what happens if the path doesn't match the route.
Yeah, but we don't pass routes. We just pass route segments.
Well,
So
I
I
mean,
think
you pass the route to parse route, right? Like, I mean, don't you call parse route and then try extract parameters?
yes, but that's it. But those are two different functions. I mean,
Right, but like
technically we can break
together,
it.
you use them together, right? Together, like, how am I to know whether the path matches the route?
It can. I mean, that way it can be broken. So Formatter uses that, so it takes both HTTP route and HTTP path, so it compares them. But in that case, you can break it. But I think they're just gonna ignore the parameter itself if it doesn't match the path.
Right, I think
But
that's bad.
it's possible.
Like, I think we need a different API that like makes it clearer if it fails, like due to not giving it a big enough array, or like whether the route didn't match the path. It should definitely not like partially fill it in. If it's ever ambiguous, like however many parameters there are going to be, then we're going to need like a count as an out parameter or something.
Oh yeah, I think we can do that.
Sorry to butt in, Steven.
No,
I'm
it's
sure
fine.
you're going there.
Yeah. I've also just been looking at the implementation more, that this is all very tightly tied to other things. All the redaction. Why is the redaction stuff built into this? It seems like a weird mix of stuff to bake into a parser.
I mean, so like all of the five classes that I'm trying to public here is related, and also reduction. And I think reduction is kind of a glue that can be tied to anything that can be reduced, starting from the HTTP parameters and ending into something completely different.
Right,
just
but
a
why wouldn't I
parameter.
just want to? Why wouldn't I want to extract the parameters and then decide separately, separation of concerns, what to redact? Why is the redaction baked into the parser?
I mean, if we parse something and so I'd say we just use the parse results directly when we write logs or something like that, so we can decide in the moment when we parse them, right? So no one actually sees them, no one gets a back from the parser, because in that case, if I just parse my parameters and they have some extremely sensitive data, right, I'm gonna return it back to the caller, and they can get a grasp of it. But at the same time, I can just have a private method that would use the parser, and we would just return the parameters. So a caller of that method would never know the original values of them. I mean, there is still ways to do that, but if something accesses the parameters directly, which can be extremely sensitive, I think that we can have the data reduction baked into it.
So the caller had the whole HTTP path. So they have everything that is already extremely sensitive. So if that is extremely sensitive, then, well, it probably shouldn't have been in the path. Like, redaction is a thing, but you're saying like, oh, it's extremely sensitive. Well, it turns out they have the sensitive value already.
Yeah, it's sensitive to some degree. Okay. I agree.
Yeah, like
So
how common is it actually? Like, I'm curious if you know of any customers who are logging some route parameters but not the path. Is that a thing? Like, you don't log the request path, but you log like a subset of the parameters?
I think so. I mean, I cannot precisely name any of the customers that has such a use case, but given that it's here, I can assume. I mean, this code is quite, I mean, not that old, but I think it had a reason for it to be that way.
It makes a lot of sense. Like, a lot of this was originally designed for headers, I think. Yeah, I'm also questioning, like,
It is
if
similar.
this is something we want to throw in your face for paths. I mean, I guess it is HTTP route parameter redaction mode. Never mind. I'm thinking more about the broader redaction functionality that we offer in this space. But yeah, clearly this type is for parameter redaction.
I think headers works in the same way. I think the headers reduction is quite the same.
Yeah, headers, well, my argument is like headers, I think, redaction makes a lot of sense. But yeah, anyway, I was just curious how commonly this is used.
Yeah,
all right.
I totally get all this as an implementation detail of the diagnostics library. We're talking about now exposing a route parser and a route formatter that is very tied to those implementation details. And that's where I'm trying to wrap my head around how generally usable is this actually? Like, who is actually going to use these public APIs?
Especially because for this one, I can't find an internal caller.
I mean, there are a few like internal teams that use it, that just for sure across multiple projects, and sometimes it's not worth to bring like the whole SPNet stuff, and otherwise it's just gonna be re-implemented. So that's one of the reasons why these APIs are proposed to get public.
I think Jeremy's point is, if you look at the existing code base, there are 0 callers of try extract parameters.
I see
I
one
feel like
in
that's got to be a bug in source.net because there's like a ton of usage of HTTP route parameter redaction mode in the test, at least. So something's got to be.
I see
reading it
one
to
in
extract the parameters.
in diagnostics and in middleware. Is this internals visible too,
Oh, is it?
or maybe source shared?
It might be source shared.
Because yeah, I mean there seem to be 2 calls to this because I was trying to see, what's anybody doing with the ref, because I was curious.
It is internals visible too.
No,
IVT.
Jesus.
How I hate
All
you.
right,
From Microsoft Extensions telemetry to Microsoft Extensions HTTP diagnostics and Microsoft ASP.NET Core diagnostics middleware.
Yep. Okay, those are the 2 callers are the 2 that you said.
So we got to be very careful changing this. If I mean,
Yeah,
like
this
we can't
will
change
this we can't.
Um,
It has to be something new, or we're going to break existing libraries.
Exactly. Yeah, we just can't
This-
change this.
this is
now.
effectively public
internals
surface area.
visible to is evil. We just got to treat it as public API already.
So this public is actually a subset of all the internal things, but we can definitely think about any new APIs that's going to be
The
useful.
point is, like, when making it actually public, we'll probably want to adjust something. But we can't change the internal type, and we don't want conflicts between like the internal and the public type. So
What's interesting is both callers seem to rent the route parameter array, but then never return it. So they set up an entire array pool just to not pool. Fun times.
Yeah, I'll fix that later. All right, so what do we think? Do we want to continue to the formatter, or do we just reject this proposal? Because if you don't want to expose the internal part to the public, I think it won't.
The
it
internal
doesn't work
visible two thing makes, like, unless there's really strong need for this to be public, we can't. We're in between a rock and a hard place, because if we expose the way that it's currently defined, it's a very, very strange API, like that ref HTTP route parameters thing. And if we want to make any changes to it, we will break. Like, people will have to version Microsoft Extensions telemetry and Microsoft Extensions HTTP diagnostics together. Because if they don't, we will be binary breaking them.
Well, they're depending
mean-
on the interface that's not involved in this proposal. So as long as they're still calling the interface thing, it could be.
Well, we would have
kept
to
consistent.
we would have to duplicate everything, right? We would have to
That's
create a
probably true.
whole new. It wouldn't be a rename; it would be a brand new thing.
it's almost tempting to do something like hide the visibility of it, but like make the parts that we use via internals visible to public, just so we don't accidentally mess this up in the future. So we'll know.
Public editor browsable, never delete the
Yeah.
IVT, and put
Basically.
an obsolescence warning on it or something.
Right, like something like that, because I'm just a little worried. Like, it would be easy to make a change to this and not realize that it's gonna break. Like, I guess if it depends on what's using it. If it's only used by the shared framework, they probably version together. But yeah, that might be the excuse.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how extensions builds, but all the NuGet packages out of runtime now all version together. Like, we stopped doing selective package publication. We just publish everything every month.
So I appreciate that, but we don't have max versions. So like the risk is, if they were actually NuGet packages, like you could come with, have conflicts that way. But if they're all part of the shared framework, it's
I see, because you could pull a forward version of a more dependent package, and then it would fail
Exactly.
to find what it needed from its dependency. Okay.
And the shared framework solves this, and I'll admit I've been in a few conversations where I'm like, all right, internals visible 2 is fine here because like they'll never
it's
be
not.
split.
Yeah.
Okay.
In .NET
Well, next
runtime,
time I'll loop you in, Tobe. But yeah,
IVT should
like,
die.
yeah,
yeah, it really should.
in runtime,
Anyway.
this was you know, I know Wes was really adamant about it when we started CoreFX. It's we will never use internals visible to, so we don't in runtime.
Honestly,
at all.
it's good to keep the hard line, and it would be nice to get it away. It would be nice to get rid of it.
Yeah, because you know I was letting us get through things before bringing up issues like this struct exceeds 24 bytes. The name segment is overly general. Why are we exposing start and end and the strings? Because start and end feels like we want to do slicing, but we've already sliced and copied. Like this doesn't feel designed. It feels built. Like, why are these virtual? You described a caching behavior, but virtual means you can't describe really behavior. So this feels, if you want to say that it uses caching, then these should be non-virtual, and the base class is providing the caching, and you have the protecteds of how is it doing the implementation when the cache was amiss, and like, so. Yeah.
It is, yes.
So this doesn't feel designed.
All right then. I'll might think about some better use case, but if not, I mean, I think we still need a better public API if you're gonna expose it, but I'm not sure of it right now. But we will.
I do agree with like the original premise that route parsing / formatting without having like all of ASP.NET Core in HTTP context is annoying on .NET. So like I would be interested in seeing like something in the space, but maybe more like designed from scratch. It'd be nice if we could reuse it with ASP.NET Core so that there's not like diverging implementations.
Yeah, that's fair because the current design it carries a lot of the original decisions.
Okay. Do we have specific points we want to record for posterity, or what?
I think the only points I would make is like we're interested in the scenario, but we want something that's like more general and not as focused on redaction and that could be reused by ASP.NET Core internal routing. The last one might be hard, but we should at least like look into it.
All right.
Right.
So
Yes.
segment's too
Thank-
big. Is an overly general name. Try extract parameters is where we ground to a halt, and IVT is making life painful. So I guess step one's get off of that.
Yeah, sounds good. Thank you guys for feedback.
Thanks for the discussion. All right. Next up should have been Adam, but he's out sick. And then Iram, who couldn't make it today. So, of things that were sent out on the preset agenda, we're done. But we now do have a crowd of people, so is there anything we want to talk about?
Where did we land with the stream factories and read-only sequence?
I mean, we didn't land anywhere.
Do we want to discuss that again, or do we have the right people?
Seems like you have the people that weren't in the last one and not the people that were in the last one, and Tanner and I will provide very different feedback than whoever was providing the opposite
I
argument.
can represent the like we should push read-only sequence down, but I realize that I might be a losing fight.
Yeah, I think one of the big things was all the comments about how static extension members work were wrong. Static extension members are very much invocable directly. They work just like all the extension members we've had for the last 20 years. So from a usability standpoint, nothing changes there.
Yeah, so since the last time we talked about this, which was that last week? Yeah, I did have do some self-exploration and had a discussion with Fred from the compiler team, and I feel like when we were previously talking about them, where we added them for the generic math, maybe I'd seen the unspeakable name and somebody explained the unspeakable name and I took it as the only way that it was exposed, but apparently that's just the metadata of how the extension gets resolved, and the real thing is that this really is read-only sequence stream extensions dot from read-only data. And then
I think
projects it onto stream.
I think maybe from the generic math, you might have been remembering that for operators and properties, they get exposed a little bit differently in that a property is exposed as get underscore foo and set underscore foo, as in the IL name that backs the property getter and setter. And operators are exposed as tensor.op underscore addition. So if you need to go and resolve those to handle an ambiguity, you get the IL name of the operator and the property. And that's kind of the only special thing.
All that said, like I'm in no way wed to using stream.from XYZ. Like I'd be fine as well if we want to do as stream methods or as stream extension methods, or a combination. For some things we use the from, and for other things we use as stream. I was pushing back on the notion that we should push read-only sequence down because of this. That made no sense to me.
Yeah, and that was my same pushback, especially because there's other types where this might be applicable. Tensor is a good example, which will never be able to move down to corelib. And it feels like we should have a design here that works in general for our types and that third-party users will follow as well. And if we say we're doing stream.from, people are going to go, oh, I'm just going to add my extension method here to make it accessible as well. Otherwise, as or to or some other pattern seems like it's better if that's how we want people to do that.
Yeah, I wouldn't say like this reason is reason alone to move read-only sequence down, but I mean, I just figured it'd be like a nudge in that direction. Like it could also be convenient to have like a socket Sunday sync API that had read-only sequence, or like, you know, I could try to come up with a few more, but you know, this is just one. I'm not saying it's like as important as like span or memory or like these continuous buffers or anything, but it's nice for like the kind of, you know, like socket IO in particular, I think, because you end up with these small buffers a lot.
Yeah, there's an element where I know that from the BCL penetration perspective, we kind of ignore read-only sequence. But Glenn asserted, and I haven't looked at telemetry. He asserted that ASP.NET is 50% of .NET workloads, at which point read-only sequence is in half of the apps. So saying it shouldn't go in core lib because what about the apps that don't use it becomes less of an argument. But the initial person, to my recollection, who was like, why don't we just move read-only sequence down, was Mr. St. John. So Eric, would you like to pick up from last week?
Yeah, I want to make it clear that the main elaboration around pushing down the type was because it didn't seem like that was considered as a possibility. And I don't think myself or even Stefan or Vivian had a strong opinion on this. And so what we were urging folks to do was develop an opinion on where the final home of that type should be, because that will determine if, you know, hey, if we're planning on making this a more core concept, are we planning on plumbing this through more types in IO, or networking, which is another IO, but file IO or networking or further, then maybe it makes sense to push down the exchange type and not have the extension. That said, like I don't have a strong opinion about this type. I actually, you know, I haven't used it a ton, so I'm not gonna die on that hill. But I have been present and responsible for plenty of extensions that we created during the whole, you know, Win8 factoring, where we tried to divide concerns between you know, file systems and platforms without file systems. And so we created extension methods because we assumed things were unchangeable. And, you know, and now we carry those as cruft. So it's not, you know, I want to underscore that I'm not a strong proponent for us to, you know, like against extension methods or even for moving this type. I just want us to have an opinion about like what's the roadmap for a given type, and consider things that we might not have considered as changeable, and then say like, is that worth it? Are we not going to? And you know, after that meeting, you know, we spent a good amount of time covering the you know, the action of moving a type, because I think a lot of folks hadn't thought of it, or what would be involved, or you know, what trade-offs. So I think there was a lot of exploration around that, but yeah, it was not, don't take that exploration as you know, a sign of that's like preferred or anything like that. So
I
yeah.
appreciate that. I think my concern is moving the type as an implementation detail from the perspective of what is the consumption experience. We can enable stream.from read-only data. If that's the API we want, we can enable that regardless of whether we move the type.
Yeah. From a static compilation perspective, for sure.
From the perspective of what does the developer, human or AI, need to write to express that concept, the resulting code looks the same regardless of whether we move it down or not.
Yeah, there's
Eh.
there's edge cases around binding, like runtime binding scenarios, where that I don't know if we care about that, but there are some small ref edges, and I don't know how often we consider those in an API review, or if we're just concerned with the C# compiler syntax.
Those
And
are
again,
rough
this
edges.
isn't the-
There are rough edges
th-
regardless of whether you move it down. The edges, the ramifications are different, but there are still considerations to be had either way. My point is, I think from an API perspective, we need to decide what we want, and
yeah.
then is it possible? And then
Mhm.
it's an implementation choice how we choose to do it. And I think we've somehow jumped from
No.
okay.
No, and I think as part of what we want is also like, do we want a type to eventually become more prolific? And I think it's worthwhile
But-
to ask that question when we're doing
Sure, but that's orthogonal from the API we want to expose here. We can decide we can decide we don't want stream.from read-only data, and then that conversation is totally relevant. We can decide we do want stream.from read-only data. API decision is effectively done at that point, and then it's a question of exactly what is the mechanic for exposing that API? Are we
Sure.
exposing it as a static extension,
Yeah.
or do we need to move the type down? But we can decide this is the API shape, this is the pattern, and so on before we even get to that part. And
Well, I do
regardless of
think-
whether we move read-only sequence down, if that's the pattern we're expecting, we're dictating to every other type in the world that will never be moved to corelib, many of which we don't own, that is the pattern that they will follow, and their only answer is static extensions. So
So I'm sympathetic that there are some types that will never be able to move down, and like someday we'll have to have like for real the conversation of like how we use the static extension methods. But like regardless of how good we make static extension methods, even if all the runtime things are great, reflection works great, like the documentation works great, the IntelliSense works great, yada yada yada, like if we know we're going to move read-only sequence down before .NET 11, like, wouldn't we want to put the from read-only data like next to all the other methods, if only because AI is going to like find it in the same file?
But my point is like this whole proposal got stalled because of a conversation about moving down read-only sequence. We can decide on the pattern that we want. At least that's what came out of the notes, is we don't want to use static extensions. We strongly against them. We should investigate read-only sequence being moved to corelib. When from my perspective, the way we move this forward is by deciding on the pattern that we want. Do we want to use stream.from? Do we want to use .asStream? What is the pattern that we want to use and recommend for any type in the ecosystem that wants to create a conversion to stream? We decide on that. Some of the ways that we implement that are then obvious, and some require investigation into the exact mechanics. But right now, we've stalled the whole thing.
And I'm very
me-
much in agreement with Stephen here on that, particularly because not only does it impact just the general consistency of the API across anything we do today and moving forward, but also because this is half the reason we expose static extension methods, and there will be people using this on Net Standard 2.0 that will have to polyfill, and they will polyfill using whatever they need to based on the shape we do. The way that the actual API gets bound and resolved and everything else is an implementation detail. And so we really need to decide that. Do we want this to be a from method? Do we want this to be an as method, a to method, etc.? And then that dictates how everyone else is going to work
Sure.
with it regardless of where they are.
Yeah. To be clear, we actually weren't even going to touch this issue in the last meeting because folks with strong opinions weren't there. And so it was stalled because we knew about these strong opinions. And then the reason why we talked about pushing types down is like, oh, actually, maybe there's a path to investigate here. So I apologize that that didn't get represented correctly in the follow-on chatter, but that was how it played out in the call. Was we actually wanted y'all's feedback because we knew that there were plenty of strong opinions around the extension thing, and so it was just like, hey, can we bolster the position here by exploring, do we even need, is this the right use case? Is this the right, test case for having the extensions discussion? And so gathering the data around the type move was important to for that discussion. So, but yeah, let's,
Yep.
maybe
When we
take a step
discussed
back
it
from
last
that.
week, it started with we don't have the people to say yes, so
Right.
it wasn't
Yeah.
stalled
So we were
on that
trying to get-
discussion. It was a
We're trying to get our arguments.
pre-discussion.
sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah, and for the base thing, like Tobe, what you want the feedback on, like, yes, I like the stream dot from more than the string dot as stream, or adding as stream extension methods to all these types. I don't know what the alternatives are, and if like in order preference, right? Like it would be move read-only sequence down, do from for everything, then do it the way as proposed with the static extension. Or if we're like really scared, we don't have to block the proposal. We could just like do the first half, right, and then like table it just for read-only sequence. But I'd probably rather have the static one than nothing.
I think the initial decision to be made is what is the pattern we want to use. I'm aware of 3 options: static methods, instance methods, or dedicated types for each. So that would be stream.from versus .asStream versus string stream. I think those are basically the 3 options that have been on the table for years, and we haven't decided between them. We got stalled on the .from approach because of the lack of static extensions. Now we have the ability to do that approach if we want to. We have mostly been on the dedicated stream types of the 3rd option approach, but we ran into issues with things like memory of T because there's already a memory stream, and so there's a little bit of a naming oddity there. I don't know what arguments there have been against the .as stream, which, just using existing instance or extension instance methods. But I think we basically, from an API review perspective, we need to decide on which of those 3 approaches we want to take, and then just do it.
I feel like as stream is like too noisy, especially on something like string.
Yeah, I don't know that we need the same
on stream.
Yeah, I don't know we need the same answer for everything.
Yeah.
Okay. That's a fine answer too. We just need to figure out what the rule is.
Right, because I agree that as stream feels really noisy on string, but to me it doesn't feel as noisy on sequence, especially sequence of byte.
I would think that as stream is actually not noisy at all on string, and that all of link, which is there basically 100% of the time, is far noisier.
You could
fair enough.
potentially not have the default usings, maybe.
I guess it feels maybe noisy is the wrong word. It feels incorrectly layered.
It does feel like a weird layering.
Streams
like the
knowing how to build themselves from text makes sense. Text knowing how to build itself into a stream feels backwards. And maybe that's just because I know how MS Core Lib and System Private Core Lib were organized, but just in my flow, strings and streams are kind of semi-peers, with streams being higher level than string.
Yeah, a stream feels just way more heavy, and it kind of is, right? And like, yeah, having an as extension method going from like a simple type to like kind of a heavy type is, I don't know.
I think that even that is maybe looking at the layering wrong. Like if we want as stream to be the pattern because we feel that's the best, we can put the string extension for as stream in System.io, so it's only visible if you're importing System.io and have stream and string reader and all the other things there. I think it really gets down to kind of steal your quote from earlier, Jeremy. What are we designing, not what are we building?
Right.
If we feel the best design is as stream, then that's kind of the design we want to go with, and then we can decide how to expose that as part of that design, whether we only put it in system IO for the core types, whether we put it in some other namespace, separate it out how we want. We have the ability to decide how to layer it independently of how we want people to interface with the surface area.
Purely on ergonomics, I don't like as. Like as almost implies it's like a cast. And it is kind of like a cast, but it's just I prefer stream.from extension methods purely on ergonomics, not on
There
like
also be two stream.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
We have as versus two.
Yeah, we
It
need to
could
go back
be.
to the what's the rule of as versus two, and I feel like as is a 0 alloc and 2 is a alloc, or 2 is a copy and as is a reference. I don't remember. We need to page that back in, but from is
in the
easy.
stream isn't yeah, in the stream isn't that expensive, assuming you're not re-encoding. But still. Oh yeah, that was the other feedback we had last week. Maybe we should update the proposal. Is it wasn't obvious to us what the default encoding would be. I think as proposed, they wanted it to be like UTF-8, which is kind of insane. I mean, I would like that in a way.
I updated the proposal. It's in the open questions. The
Oh, is it
encoding,
below?
this is the stream encoding.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah, it is there.
I
At
mean,
the end.
Sorry.
just the
wasn't
fact that there
trying
is a
to
default
imply-
that doesn't get to tell us what the
Yeah.
default is. So
Yeah.
yeah, so I think the step 1 is what do we think the third party pattern should be? Because if we think the third party pattern should be static extension methods on stream, then that tells us a lot. If we think that the third party should be, we decide between as and to, and we say that that's the answer, then we start with that, and then find all the places that we say, "Ugh, that looks ugly," and then invert the polarity. But yeah, so ignoring everything on screen, if we were to invent a new thing like read-only sequence, what do we think? Or if James Newton King were to invent something like read-only sequence, what would we hope he did?
Right. Definitely like the stream.from. And I think it's because like when you have a read-only sequence or a string or like James' new library thing that you want to turn into a stream, like my question isn't like, oh, I have this data, what can I turn it into? Usually it's the complete opposite. It's like I have a thing that needs a stream. How do I like conform what data I have, whatever it is, into that? And seeing like all the kind of built-in easy conversions from arbitrary data types to stream in one place, I think is a significant improvement over the alternative.
I kind of have the opposite view where I think the to API makes more sense and is more common throughout the BCL, or not just the BCL, but the .NET ecosystem, specifically because of layering and lack of static extension methods up until this point. So the design people went with was, I can expose things on my own type, so I can declare the types of things that I can convert to. And so you see this with, big integer, you see it with custom collection types, you see it with basically anything is you see an API that then has a .to something that specifies, here's how I convert to that other thing.
So I think it's way more common to have a thing that has like a to array already than to have a thing that will have like an as stream or whatever. So I think when people are trying to create a stream, being like, oh, look, stream has extension methods to go from array. Oh, this other thing has to array. It's easy to piece together. If I have to call like to array as stream, it's a little harder to discover, I think. And yeah, I really like, especially for a type like stream, which is like a little bit heavy, just to see like all the convenient ways to create one from your data.
I mean, it wouldn't be to array dot as stream, because you're now presupposing that we put as stream on array somewhere. It would be James's data type dot as stream or to stream, whichever one we decide.
Is array not implicitly convertible from like read-only memory? I mean, I don't know how the
Yeah. Like I said, we ignore all the types that are on screen. How would we want?
Yeah.
How would we want a shelter stream to turn into a stream? I guess it shouldn't be a
But
shelter
my
stream because
point
that would
is, like,
extend stream.
a lot of them have to array and not to stream. So like the point is, like, if we release something that has these helpers using the thing like that inverts it, where you don't put stream first and you put the data first, whatever that is, whether it's extending read-only memory or array or span or what have you into a stream, probably not span. But like,
But to me, the fact that we already have things that have to array means that having two streams sitting right next to it is more natural.
Right. My concern is that because static extension methods are brand new this release, they're not even really consumable from other languages yet, that the ultimate experience for many people is they're not going to see it in one place, and they're not going to know to go and look on stream for all of these APIs, because their experience with such conversions up until this point has been it needs to be some kind of to method. And so I expect the first place people will look is .to, what can I convert to? That's where you do to immutable array, to list, to enumerable, like all of the different conversion APIs there, even beyond the collection types, are to methods today.
Yeah, I fundamentally and strongly disagree that like people who have like to array on their data types now should be writing like to stream methods as well. Like most people like just want to write to array and be done with it. Like having every library like write all these methods for all their data types, like if they want to and they think that there's a need for a stream, like, you know, yes, they should use the static extension methods on stream. I think,
Well,
you know, there's not a precedent for as stream or to stream today, really. So I think it's better to, for discoverability, to be like, yeah, you know, if you're creating a stream from a common type, like look at the stream factory methods.
but I think you'd only be adding the to stream if you had a way that you were implementing a stream better than calling to array. At least in my head.
Right, but then that gets to my point where you're then going to have actual code that's calling like foo type dot to array dot to stream, and that's like going to be the right way to do it. And honestly, it's just kind of, I mean, maybe I'm like log demeter isn't a law for real, but like stream dot from array dot data dot to array seems like a lot better than data dot to array to stream to me. But that's definitely like a stylistic kind of vibe based feeling, but I just feel like that reads better.
I mean, again, I don't expect that we would end up with array dot to stream. I feel like we're going to end up with the static from for array, so it would be stream dot from read only data of your data type dot to array.
Well, I totally agree with that, but that, yeah, like it's to the point. Like I think that we should be consistent with that, and we should just use the static factory methods for all the data types, so it's discoverable. But yeah, I totally agree. Like we're not going to have array to stream, so let's not do it for any of this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I will. So you know, it may be a nitpicky thing, but I will point out that if we make anything that is an extension method needs, it needs a type to declare it. That type needs a name. That name has to be public, and then we have the does the name make sense when called from the declaring type, and does the name make sense when called from the projected type. And I think that historically we've said we should name the extension types well, and then we've done things like name it read-only sequence stream extensions and say, nobody ever sees this name, who cares? But like, it really is there. It really is in docs. It really is callable. It shows up in IntelliSense. We can hide the last one. But an extension method is two methods, and we only ever think about one of them. But we should think about both. The guidelines do say something about avoid frivolous extension methods, especially on types that you don't own. If we do think that the from is the what we want the everyone doing pattern, then this sort of makes sense of as long as this method is declared in the assembly that provides this type, then you're not going to have the worst problem with extension methods, which is when you copy a block of code from one project and paste it into another, and you just get red squiggle of like, this word doesn't make sense in your context, and now you have nothing that can help you figure out why. We've gotten a little bit better tooling with understanding common NuGet packages, but missing references that are the things that are defining an extension method that you can't find is actually a hard problem to solve. It was one of the biggest usability problems that I saw with the Microsoft, ML.NET. They did a bunch of stuff with extension methods from catalogs, and if you did not have the same references that the sample you were looking at did, then, well, good luck figuring out where that method came from. So there are times to use extension methods, but I think they need to be deliberate instead of just like, we can. I made everyone quiet.
Can we approve this or approve anything today related to this?
I mean, we get to start with what would we recommend that a third party type do? I mean, if we want to just go ahead and say we know that this is the shape that we want for the types in CoreLib, then we could approve that and then punt on this and say we need to design the third party pattern. But because I don't think any of us are super gonna like string dot to stream, whether it's an instance method or an extension method. I think we're all a little like, that's the wrong direction. But once we get down here, we're like, yeah, it might be the right direction. So
I'm actually fine with toStream on everything for the same reason that that's what we do with Link and everything else. It seems like the natural pattern, and if we were to have a theoretical iStreamable counterpart to iEnumerable, which some other languages have, just not .NET, that's what we'd probably end up doing.
So
although that'd probably be get stream instead of toStream, much like there's get enumerator.
Does that imply that you could put iStreamable on a string?
That was more kind of just like a theoretical, like, if we were to take this all the way, other languages treat streams as first class, much as they treat enumerations and collections as first class. And like .NET is one that only treats collections as first class today. We don't do that with streams. And that's why we've got all these different patterns for memory and stream and collections and sequence and all that. We've got all these different buffers and other approaches with no unifying characteristic over them. And in other ecosystems, that unifying characteristic is stream.
I mean, that's not the only reason. If we could have used stream instead of iBufferWriter and PipeWriter and PipeReader, in a lot of cases we would have. But in like read-only sequence and so forth, like it is the most common streaming type, and it's definitely like, I do understand wanting to promote it though, like that.
Well, I'm not even necessarily saying we should promote it. I'm just saying that, like, if we were to ever take it all the way, then what other ecosystems do here is they functionally have an iStreamable. And so in such a scenario, you end up with the pattern of it's just, toStream or getStream or asStream or whatever you want to call it. It's not stream from. it's object to the thing that you want to create.
Yeah, I mean, I think it really depends on what it is, right? Like in an HTTP context, you don't have like toStream or FromStream because you just have like the request and the response body. Those are the streams. They're just streams. But like when you have data and you're like kind of contorting it into this like less convenient way to read the same data, like, right? Don't get me wrong. Like, this is like mostly for, yeah, it's like you write an algorithm that is meant to be streaming, so it's like the most generic thing possible, and like every once in a while you need to turn read-only data into that. I don't know if that's like,
Yeah, so it's exactly what IEnumerable is for collections,
I
except
feel like
it gives
that's
you the
different.
additional ability to know exactly where you are in that enumeration and to generally seek to a new location in the enumeration. It's conceptually very similar to iList with a tracking of what's my current index. They're all at a high abstract level the same things.
Yeah, I kind of
And
see your like type theory argument, but I would argue that like enumerating a collection is just a much more common thing for code to do than to like read a stream of bytes. So it's like it isn't as fundamental.
what I was getting at there is that they are conceptually the same thing. So in the places you would end up using this iStreamable, it's the same scenario as you would end up using IEnumerable for a collection, or the same places you would use iNumber of t in a generic context for working with numbers. There are times where you want to work with the concrete data, times you want to work with the abstract data. And in many cases, you want to have a general purpose API that works with anything. That's what span is for linear data.
But numbers are numbers, right? A thing implements iNumber. It doesn't have toNumber. Like if it's either like it is a stream and it like literally the type represents a stream of bytes, and in which case it's a stream, or it's very, very close, right? And like PipeReader does have AsStream APIs because it's very, very close. But for
Right,
like, there's a
why-
lot more enumerable data than streaming data. It's just not as common of a thing. And I do think that should change our approach as
That's
for
why-
like how fundamental we can.
That's why I compared it to IEnumerable, where you have something that is IEnumerable. In this case, string is streamable. And you say you want to get the thing that allows the streaming. So IEnumerable gives you access to the enumerator, much like string gives you access to the string reader. It
Yeah.
ends up conceptually mapping between those in the same ways of you have a thing that supports the concept of processing the bytes or the data or the elements or anything else. And so you have the desire to go and get the thing that allows you to do that. In this case, you're saying I have a string. I want to get a stream over that string. Or you say I have a sequence, I want to get a stream representing that same sequence. It's regardless of it being a wrapper or anything else, you have that layer of I have the thing and then I have the thing that gives me the desired abstraction over it. And in this case, it's I want to get a stream over the data I have as compared to I want to get enumeration over the data I have.
Yeah, like my line is basically this: like AsStream is fine for things like PipeReader and PipeWriter or iDuplex Pipe. It's not fine for like array and string and stuff like that. So it really depends on like what you're converting.
And I think that's where I disagree, because that's exactly what memory stream is. We go through all these extra steps to create a memory stream over an array. And I know I've defined projects before where I've just done toStream. I've actually done that for arrays to get the memory stream out because I'm working with memory streams everywhere.
Yeah, and looking at things on the screen right now, my brain wants to say that as means we're holding a reference, so changing, and this is a question somebody had asked in chat, of if we build one of these streams from a memory, and then we write to the source data before we've read that position from the stream, does it get the original data or the modified data? And I think as means it's a reference, so you'll get the modified data, and to means it was a copy, so you don't. The from actually hides that, and then we have to put in the documentation, was this a copy or is this a reference?
One thing that I don't love about having like 2array and 2stream on the same level is like, assume you have like a sequence, and you have an API that can take an array. Like, yeah, say you have like read-only data, and you have an API that can take an array or stream. Like, you want to turn it into an array. Like, I do feel like it's more fundamental most of the time.
Yeah, but then that's the same as you have an API that takes IEnumerable, and you have an overload of that API that takes span, or that takes TArray, and a length and an offset. We have all these overloads and specializations where they're appropriate, and where you don't need them.
Honestly, like, I just want these helper methods so bad. Like, I don't hate as stream to stream or whatever as an extension method. Like, I definitely would rather have that than not shipping this for another release.
What about get stream?
I mean, it feels weird to me, but again, I just want the functionality. So
Like so if it's an instance method on string, and so again we can decide that string ends up being special, because like people are gonna think that's go load that file. Like, you look at that line of code and you're like, that's a weird way to load a file. If it just says hello, you may not think that, and if you just see it as a variable, you won't think that. But the fact that string literals are a thing makes that line of code surprising.
I'd probably flag that in API review, but I also don't think I would expect it to try to detect if an arbitrary string is a path and then get a stream from it. I would think that's just bad API design.
Sure, I just mean
new feature requests.
I just mean string literals mean that
Yeah.
that this becomes the thing that I think most people's brain would latch onto of what that particular line of code does is not the thing that particular line of code does, which makes the string instance of whether it's get, as, or to feels like that one is special.
Yeah, that's fair.
Which is why maybe that one's more on the like from text, and that way we're saying the role that the string is playing here is it's not a path, it's not a right. So I think string is going to end up being inverted polarity no matter what. I think it's going to be a from, because we're going to want to name the method differently. Like, this wasn't
Also,
stream.from string, it was stream.from text in the proposal.
Do we really need the string one, considering that string reader is right there and it's just as many
Yes.
characters effectively?
yes. Discoverability.
You can add your own discoverability. It's been there since like .NET 1.
Yeah, I think string reader is the most discoverable.
Maybe. I mean, I don't know.
There's cases where we really need, for example, I think in HTTP request response, they use a stream.
Right.
Right, but string reader is stream. It inherits from it. Right?
No,
There's like a
you
text
have to-
reader
you have
and
to use
there's
.string because it's text reader.
Yeah.
And text reader wraps a stream rather than
already
inherit.
way too ugly. Get over it. Yeah. we need the extension method.
Yeah, I think. Does this one go the right direction?
I think
So-
stream reader might work. Does it have a string argument? Or do you need to give it like a text reader?
You give it a
See,
stream
more
or a
annoying than it should
string,
be.
and I don't see how to get the stream. Oh, base stream.
Oh, it's a text reader on the stream. Yeah, it's that
Yeah.
one. See, it's always hard to remember like string reader, stream reader, or whatever reader. Like just giving you the static methods.
Yeah. And catalog.apireview.net doesn't know about framework 1, so I can't answer if it was 1.0 or 1.1 or if it was 2.0. I haven't
Still,
found
you
the
don't-
reference
you-
pack for 1.0.
You don't build a stream reader out of a string, or do you?
No, string reader.
But doesn't even give you a
No.
stream. We're looking
I
at
opened the wrong
stream
one.
reader. I don't
Yeah.
even see a stream on string reader.
Sorry.
So I mean, you're talking about how it's the most common way to do it, but
Yeah, sorry.
does
I
anyone else
just-
do this?
I hit like STR and hit go. I didn't type enough letters. So string reader.
That string overload is a path, I believe, isn't it?
No, it's the string that it reads.
No way.
String reader, yeah, but it gives you a text reader, right? So then you need to go from like text reader to stream or something.
But text reader I think has stream as a base property.
Oh, okay.
No,
but you
no,
still
it's
have to
just
access the
stream reader
property.
that does.
Oh.
Text reader
See?
doesn't.
See, it is terrible.
Okay.
Like, why have we not fixed this yet?
Fair enough.
Maybe the real fix here is to fix stream reader.
I mean, we
Or
could do
string
both.
reader.
It's to go
But,
back
like,
in
I would
time, invent a class called file path. Never let APIs take strings when they meant paths. You have to take a file path. Like,
Honestly, I hate like HP client for like strong typing headers and stuff. Just like I know there are raw headers that you can edit. So there's a balance, but I hear your point. Time safety is nice, and you could have explicit conversions.
well, because then string get stream would obviously be the string data, and then path get stream would be fine. Go open the path. Like the type system would at least disambiguate what you were doing, but.
Yeah, every time I have to turn a string into a stream, I feel like I'm using like a memory stream or something, and then like a stream writer into it or something ridiculous. Not, I mean, not that you often have to do it. You can usually just like write the text to a file and use a file stream or something. But yeah, like
So
it's
stream
annoying.
reader does take a string, but that's a path. So stream reader is the line of code I shared. So new string reader of string is go open the file named that path. Yeah, so again, this violating the principle of least surprise makes me think that we won't want to go the instance route on string. And if we say that string is the only one that's true, that's fine. The saying a read-only memory can be wrapped into a stream is fine. Again, that does bring me back to, I think our guideline is as means it's a reference holding, and to means it was a copy, which means we would probably want these to be as streams, and then if we wanted to add one for span, it would be to stream because it has to make a copy.
Would it be as stream and as text stream for the case that it's UTF-8?
If we wanted read-only span of, or read-only memory of byte to support being UTF-8, then yeah, we would overload it as, we'd have to put text in the method name somewhere. So. UTF-7
Just
source,
to
deal with it.
Sorry, what would the difference be of the byte content of the stream in the case of as text stream?
It wouldn't.
It
So-
would matter if providing encoding for the same reason
Yeah.
char does.
What
Yeah, so I guess
What is that encoding used for when your
So-
output is bytes?
that would
Well,
be
so
read the source as UTF-8 and then write it back through the encoding into the target encoding. So if you wanted to transcode a UTF-8 string into a UTF-16 stream, it would be this.
which is how
see.
StreamReader works today and why it takes an encoding parameter.
Yeah. Well, the stream reader is putting strings out, right?
So
So
that
it's specifically for conversion. This one is
so that's sort of
Yeah,
UTF-8
I didn't realize
source
that.
from UTF-8
I
to
see.
encoding. Sort of.
I see.
Yeah, because it also then matters for things like endianness of the bytes that you output, and whether like for char it matters, is this going to be big or little?
Yep, and then all of them get the good old bomb or no bomb. For anyone only listening, I gave a big thumbs down. All right. Yeah, so, and I think chat has pointed out, we do also have another type that we can look at as our, maybe we think that read-only sequence is special, but other third-party types aren't, is we have the type binary data. So we could also just look at what would we want binary data to do. Because I think we kind of ignore that type. Like, even more than we ignore read-only sequence. And I feel like binary data as or to stream feels natural. Or get stream if we want to go the route of read the docs to find out if you have a copy or a reference.
Just to make sure that I understand, can I understand correctly that the from methods, we are not going with that because we think that the us or to stream, it's more correct given that it aligns with anything we do in the future if we want to promote the stream to be um, more primitive, I would say. Like for example with the iStreamable interface that Tara was mentioning. So is that good enough reason for not going with from? Is that where we are?
I don't know that we're anywhere.
Yeah,
I don't know
like,
if we're anywhere
I-
either. I gave some arguments and Stefan's given
I
some
backed
other
down
arguments.
first.
Yeah.
and we,
I'm
we
just
kind
like
I'm writing
we-
this
we
down so that we
disagree.
have the other side to look at. Like the
Yeah.
froms are on
we
screen already.
disagree.
So
We disagree, but I don't think either of us is so strong set that we would refuse the other's position. I think it's just a difference of one of us has a preference for one and the other for the other way.
I see.
but
Also,
there is the
about binary,
go ahead, Vivi.
I was gonna say that about binary data, there's currently an internal implementation of read-only memory stream, and binary data has to a stream that uses that internal implementation, which is public.
Fair enough.
Yeah, and binary data also has the pattern that we have here, which is from string, from byte, and from some other stuff.
Yes, but it's a high level type. So again, that's where we got to of stream to me, and I think to somebody else, feels like a higher level concept than these. So it's saying I know how to take these things as input is natural. It feels like it's either parallel to or lower than read-only sequence, which is why this feels backwards. But then we're like, well, we're not sure if it's higher than or parallel, so now we move into binary data. Binary data is a very highfalutin, high-level type, intended to be a high-level type. So it's saying I know how to push myself down into a stream makes sense. So high-level types go to a stream. Low-level types come. Stream knows how to be from the low-level types. I think many of us feel that that's natural.
So given that the stream currently is higher level than string, have we ever decided to ship an API and then if something changes, well, we also do the other thing that is like the as stream, and then just delegate the previous decided API, which could be like more pragmatic, to just call the other implementation. Does that make sense? What I'm saying?
The only times that I can think of that we have two ways of approaching something from a high level or from a low level were mistakes that we made in factoring .NET Core 1.
Yeah, it just feels odd that well, I don't know. I think it feels kind of odd to go with as a stream, basically because we are not promoting today the stream type. I don't know. I don't know if someone wants to refute that or if that's even refutable.
What do you mean we're not promoting stream? Stream is the only way you can read a file.
No, what I'm saying is that we're not putting in the same level as a stream today, right?
Right.
Like a stream is not as fundamental as a string. So going with the as stream, it kind of makes it feel like we're okay with promoting a stream and setting the ground to put the iStreamable interface maybe in the future or anything.
Right. So, yes, personally, I think this looks natural and this looks backwards.
So,
that's
maybe you brought up binary data. It might be worth noting that binary data already has a two-stream method on it.
Yep, Vivi shared that already.
Okay.
Now, binary data was invented in the past, which means they did have to deal with technical limitations of the past. So this was the only direction that they could go. The question is, if we were doing the entirety of the framework, starting over with C#14, is that the pattern we still would have gone with? And I feel like yes, because binary data is a high-level abstraction. It is literally hiding, am I a stream or an array or whatever. So it has placed itself as a higher level than stream. But string is lower than stream.
So
yeah, that's
one
kind of how I
question.
feel too. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, it's okay. I was just gonna ask if the chosen route is as stream, then the conclusion, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, Jeremy, is that it will be different for string for the layering you all just discussed. So will that mean that there will be like a naming asymmetry there for this approach? I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah,
And
so
if that's okay.
So it would be if we go with the layering interpretation, then the things that we think are lower level than stream would get stream.from. So like this. And then things that we think are higher level than stream would get instance methods or instance extension methods to turn themselves from their instance down into a stream. So we'll have from in one direction and as or to in the other direction, and that's fine. We can explain what the heuristic is, and then now we just need to figure out where the cut line is. Like, is memory more fundamental than stream? If so, it gets a from, and if it's less fundamental than stream, then it gets an as.
And I think it's clearly more fundamental, considering stream has methods taking memory.
Yep. And then we get to move to the white elephant in the room, which is sequence. And is it more or less, or is it unfortunately a peer? And that means we have to flip a coin.
I think it's slightly more fundamental because it's data at rest. Like if it were iBuffer reader or iBuffer writer or pipe reader or something like that, I would feel different. And like the pipe writer and pipe reader already have like the as stream kind of APIs. But for read-only sequence, it's a lot more like memory, and I don't think it's a peer.
I would actually say that it's either a peer or less.
That's wild that it's less. I mean, but okay.
Yeah.
I'll let you finish.
Yeah, so I think that it would be a peer from the perspective of that so memory is definitely less because it is strictly a representation of linear data. You cannot have nonlinear data. It has to be singular allocation. There's no discontinuity of it, etc. Then with sequence, you end up having many of the same concepts of stream, where you end up having the consideration of, well, this can actually be multiple discontinuous allocations. You have to start considering things like seeking particular data or indexing a particular offset may have different costs depending on what that n is. You start end up having all these guarantees that break up, and it's the reason that linked list doesn't implement iList with the indexing support in the same way, because it no longer provides the guarantees that most users are expecting for linear sequences of data. And so I don't think it's really more fundamental in any way than stream. And then I think it's less fundamental, namely from the perspective of it's not something that most people are used to using or working with. It really is primarily an ASP.NET ism that's used in ASP.NET. And if we were to go back in time, I had been on the team at the time, I probably would have pushed for it to be in a Microsoft Extensions buffers package instead of system memory.
Yeah, so I think just in terms of like, I see your point in terms of like stream being more popular than read-only sequence, no doubt. But in like just like a more general exchange type in practice. But I do think that fundamentally, like what a stream can represent is just like much more broad than read-only sequence. Like read-only sequence is, of course, like an abstraction on memory, because it allows multiple non-contiguous sections, but you could represent like memory using a read-only sequence, not the other way around. I think same with stream, right? Like you could represent like any read-only sequence could be represented by a stream, but not any stream could be a read-only sequence. So there's that aspect of it. Of course, that's true for like probably most things that could be turned into a stream, but yeah, I just don't see it as higher level than stream, considering it's basically a stream that you've already read and buffered, kind of. It's just like a low level type to store that without having to merge it all into a contiguous buffer. So I see it as like a low level type for that. but I definitely wouldn't want to like table all of this just because of read-only sequence. Like I would sooner leave it out initially.
You've been quiet for a little bit, Eric. How are you
Yeah.
feeling?
And so I've come to learn a bit more about read-only sequence since last week. I think last week I was talking very much on a what if scenario. So I actually did some experimenting and used it. My take is it's handy for non-contiguous data where you don't want to introduce copies, and we never really handled that well with the Stream API. So it is a valuable API. I think we since we did it, the discussion I've seen is it's definitely not a baked type. It's not a done deal. People are not. It's not universally loved and appreciated as the next exchange type for this purpose. And so for that reason, I think that puts puts to bed the question of moving it. As far as exposing the extension method, it seems fine to me. I don't see a downside other than we'll have to support that, assuming the implementation is straightforward to do in system memory. I have no qualms with adding it.
Yeah, so yeah, regardless of how much you like read-only sequence, and like, yeah, it's definitely probably could be improved, but I would say this. I don't see us like creating a new version of this anytime soon. And I think just from the like the split of like the classification of like higher level, lower level, I think it's in system buffers for a reason. Like it might not be everyone's favorite type, but it is low level. Like it's very similar to memory, except for it's non-contiguous. You might not love exactly how it's done, but it is.
Not sure I'd call it low level. It's definitely not the way that I would expect a low level sequence type API to be designed.
Yeah. So, popping back to the thing I mentioned about extension methods. If we went the ASR2 direction, we do have a type right now that's internal, but let's just use that to mean it doesn't exist, called read-only sequence that's non-generic. And the place that I would put an ASR2 is system.buffers.readonlysequence.ASR2 stream taking a read-only sequence, which we can decide to put a this on, and now it's a instance extension method. The static invocation looks sane. The instance invocation looks sane, and I think that's great. And I don't think that we have a good answer for what to do if it's a static extension method, because if you call it as stream dot, then you would just call it stream dot from read only data. So now what lives on the left of that? It has to be something ugly like this. And I think this name is ugly. So I think there's a little bit of a layer where we say stream is clearly more fundamental because it's in corelib and sequence is not. And it's if we want it to be sequence from, that's us saying sequence is primitive and should live in corelib. And if we think it shouldn't live in corelib, then it gets the inverted polarity. That's just my gut feeling. And that would just be using the general pattern that we have of generic types, of having a non-generic type of the same name that has accelerators for the generic.
Out of curiosity, of the distaste that you and Eric, or Tanner and Eric have for read-only sequence? Is it mostly just that it's like a linked list instead of like a list of pointers, or is it that like the sequence position object is untyped, or like all of the above, or is there something else?
It's not just a personal opinion. This is a common point that comes up with the design of the type in issues on GitHub, in discussions on the C# Discord. 60,000 members coming in wondering how to do this stuff, and then just raging anytime they try and have to touch read-only sequence. It's an API that clicks for some people and absolutely does not for others.
Yeah, I'm wondering though, like, you think it's irredeemable? Do you think there's things that can be done to improve it, or do you think we need another non-contiguous exchange type?
I think personally that it's a little bit like memory of T. It's what we have, and if we were to design a new type, we would probably deviate from it, much like we ended up doing with Tensor, where we said memory of T has too many problems here. We need to do something different for the new type to try and solve some of those things that we know are just fundamentally problematic with it. I think for read-only sequence in general, there is a there's kind of two issues with it. One, there's some UX problems that I don't think we can fix because it's too late in the design cycle of it. And those aren't necessarily the worst or best. I think the more fundamental problem is some of the things that have prevented us from exposing a sequence writer, the number of times that's come up. And that
Like an
it's
iBuffer writer, or what
No,
do you
just
mean
like
by that?
there is a sequence reader that allows you to work with read-only sequence. There has been requests for, yet there exists no sequence writer counterpart to that, which allows you to work with writable sequences and do the writing type APIs that you would want to do.
I see. So it's where you have the shape of a non-contiguous output buffer ahead of time. You're not like lazily allocating the buffers, but you want to be able to like project data into it. That, I mean, that's interesting, but I mean,
Well,
it's
Well, so that's one of the other things is there are people who want to be able to lazily acquire the data. That's one of the problems.
isn't
with
that
sequence.
iBuffer writer in both cases? You could do the projection too.
So the entire thing there has what I would consider usability issues, including that you cannot easily use the API that people would want to intuitively use for these types of things. You kind of have to go build your own over this extra abstraction, everything else. And it's not usable in games because there's no way to do things like enforce and optimize around the fact that all segments are of the same length, which is a very core optimization and in many domains.
So you want a more limited version of it where
No,
they're all the same length.
not strictly more limited. The desire is that there is a general shape and supporting types that allow users to have the abstraction while still optimizing for their domains and scenarios where that is appropriate.
David, I see your hands up. Sorry for letting you linger.
Yeah, in the interest of time, I just wanted to make sure that some other things are getting discussed. Like, for example, I had a question for it's not fully related to what you guys are talking, so sorry for stepping up. But what I want to make sure that it gets discussed is that for the naming, are we okay with it? For example, the asymmetry. I was pointing out to Vivi that I don't like the asymmetry of from text versus from read-only data and from writable data, like why we don't have from read-only text or writable text.
We don't have writable text. Again, I don't know that we're gonna say approve on this today.
Okay.
I think this is continuing to be a long discussion, and but this is the. Are we feeling that we want to say that there's a cut line that we do froms for the things that are lower than stream and ases or twos for the things that are higher than stream? Chat has pointed out that one of the things that I dislike about the C# language is that they allow you to call static methods via derived types. So if we do the froms, then filestream.fromText is legal code. It, again, doesn't do what you want it to. I do think we maybe have an analyzer now that says, like, stop calling this, it's on the base type.
We do. We do.
And so that would be fine. And I think that's just one of those we have to just say, yep, but we think stream.fromText is the right answer, and just don't write filestream.fromText. But the
if filestream.fromText did exist, it would get resolved, right?
So if we make stream.fromText, then filestream.fromText is legal syntax because the C# language allows that a static method could move down over
Right.
time. So that's the evolution aspect of the language, letting you say you want to move it to a base type later. Unfortunately, it means you can start off by calling it from a derived type. Which is sort of a, like, it'd be nice if the runtime allowed it, but the compile time didn't. But if we added a filestream.fromText as a different method on that type, then it would hide the stream.fromText. But I don't know what filestream.fromText would mean.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I was getting at. I'm less worried about file stream, more thinking about other people's custom streams that they could hide. So, okay, thank you.
It won't hide other people's custom streams if they expose a from API on their own type that wins out over an extension method. And if
Yeah,
they have one that's a
That's
more
what I meant. That's what I would want. Yeah.
precise-
If I had a Jeff stream and I wanted a Jeff stream.fromText, then I
Mhm.
could add that and hide, and you would get a Jeff stream out.
Right, but if you had an extension method, you would lose to the one that actually declared in the type hierarchy.
Oh, okay. Okay. All right. Thanks.
At least I'm pretty sure they didn't change the resolution order for static extension methods. So I believe its extensions always lose to non-extensions.
Yeah, it's a matter of closeness.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, like, aside from, as David pointed out, that, you know, we haven't actually talked about any of the words that go after from here. I think that drawing the line that says, are you above stream or below stream? And where from's in one direction and ases or twos in the other, I think that's consistent with the framework. And I don't think we would say, I feel like even with static extension methods, that if we were doing the whole framework over again, we would still say going from more primitive to less is different than going from less primitive to more. And that we would just still end up with this split. Again, there is a debate as to where read-only sequence and stream live in the hierarchy. Binary data is higher level. String is lower level. This is room for debate.
Yeah, and we don't need to halt everything on that. One thing, though, for when we do get to a point where we approve it, that kind of came up in the chat, is whether or not particularly the from text streams will be seekable. Apparently, doing seekability efficiently while transcoding can be hard, but at the same time, people might want seekable streams, so we might want to think about how that affects the API. And I don't know if we got a crisp conclusion if we're making the encoding non-nullable, or if it is still nullable, what the default is. I think if it is
Sure.
nullable, it has to be UTF-16.
Yes,
I think we said that last
I think
time,
our
but
hour
still.
and a half discussion has been, do we want one pattern for everything, or do we agree that asymmetry is correct?
Yeah.
And I think that the people that are
agree with
still in the
everything you
room
just said.
think asymmetry is correct.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I was just adding to what you said, but everything you said about the asymmetry, I think, is fine.
I am okay with asymmetry. It's not my favorite, but I do like the perspective of driving it off of not where the types live, but whether they are higher or lower level conceptually. And that matches, for example, how we did in float and conversions to and from float and double, where even though they all live in core lib and need to due to runtime specialization, in float is considered higher level because it is non-primitive. And so therefore it defines the conversions both directions. And none of those conversions are defined on float and double because they are the core primitive types.
What type is this that you're talking about? Int float? Sorry.
I think native,
Native
float,
float.
where native is
Yeah.
spelled
Native float.
as the letter N.
N, the letter N, N float.
Which
Okay, thank you.
exists for Mac OS.
Yes,
Okay.
not IN FLOAT or
Got it. All right, thank you.
This is why we don't normally name things one letter.
Yeah, no, I knew about Nit and stuff. I'm looking at Nfloat now.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think we are happy that binary data has an instance expression toward a stream. And I think that we don't want strings to say they can flow into a stream. So either we need a string stream that takes it as a constructor, or we want stream.fromText if we want to hide the type. Again, we haven't had that discussion of would we rather just expose the types. And and that we don't know where read-only sequence lives. We do not
I don't see
have
the benefit.
consensus on where read-only sequence lives above or below that line.
Yeah, as far as like the from text thing goes, like I don't see the benefit of like a new public type. Like if we exposed it, like would the only interesting part of it be the constructor? I think string.fromText is probably the more interesting or easier to discover thing.
I
I
say
could
that...
almost see it. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say I could almost see it returning a memory stream if that's what it is, but I don't think it will be because I think it will be lazy and stuff at least sometimes.
I was going to say, while I have my own personal preference on some of them, and I'm okay with us doing the layering and the async, might be good to check if Steven has the same opinion, since he was also one of the ones that felt we should be consistent. But then for sequence in particular, that is one where I strongly believe that it is in a different layer from System.io, and so wouldn't be the from pattern like string or memory or anything else. And on a slightly separate note, touching on the we're returning stream, and what if Jeff stream exists and they want to expose a custom as stream? It does open the question of is there a need or desire for a general from text string on stream that returns our own stream concept? We don't specify the type, and also something like memory stream from text, which explicitly returns a memory stream, or similar for other derived types. Is that a consideration we need, or that users are wanting control over what the exact stream type is in some scenarios?
I mean, there certainly is if we had a reason that we would think that it would be useful to know that you were getting a specific memory stream back?
I would say that there's some cases where I mean, just thinking about how this would be implemented in read-only sequence, they would want their own implementation. They probably wouldn't want necessarily to have a copy be made into a memory stream. So I think you could do the copy yourself in such cases. Yeah, like definitely, and I expect memory is the same, where they would want to implement the most efficient read method, right, and write method that goes directly to the span of data.
That was also the motivation for having at least an option for a non-seekable stream for from text. So that kind of thing could be done more efficiently.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would
Just-
lean towards not exposing more than just the plain stream. So for these, sorry.
There's definitely a lot of perf and customization opportunities for these APIs. Often, potentially even on a per type level of, do I want to have a seekable stream? Do I want to have a readable stream, a writable stream? And all of that ends up impacting like what is the backing type we return, even if the API says it returns stream.
But you would put it in the implementation. In the implementation should decide, not the caller, or do you think?
Right.
Do you think there's a way to communicate that to the caller, Tim?
Well, in some cases, I think the caller is the one that knows whether they need something that's seekable or not, and so we have to either provide a way or we have to document and tell them they need to roll their own. Like if they have from text, we will need to guarantee, is this seekable or not, or under what scenarios is it seekable.
That's why I'm saying I've been saying I think we need to add a parameter to from text for the next time we review this. And yeah, I think if we do return just stream, it should be like the real type we return to Jeremy's point all the time should be internal, right? So it's like not tying us to anything. Like if internally for the first iteration we use memory stream, like maybe wrap it into like internal stream just to make sure people don't rely on it.
Is it just seekable, or Tanner, it sounded like you had more options in mind?
Well, there's seekability, there's the read-only aspect. This is for the from read-only data and from writable data. That kind of gets into the concept, into the same issue as iRead-only list, in that iRead-only list does not guarantee that the data is immutable. It only guarantees that that particular view is immutable. And if you actually return something that is mutable, then a user can go and just do like .is read only and then say, oh, it's not actually read only, cast it to the writable version and write it anyways.
Yeah.
So there's just all these little considerations that go into the implementation and which may impact the surface area in some ways.
Yeah, my understanding of the from read-only data and from writable data is that the from writable data, when is stream.canWrite is true and it's writing into this provided memory, and the from read-only data, if you have a writable memory but you call from read-only data, then it obviously goes through the cast to read-only memory, and then now you have a stream that stream will not write back to your memory. Again, it's not immutable. It's just I will not be doing the writing.
Yeah. And we discussed this read last time, and I think you can read from writable data stream too if you really want to. It's like the read write.
Just like memory stream. If you give it an array, you can seek back to 0 and read.
I assume it starts at 0 in this case. But
There's also the consideration for like from text, which has the encoding, which is seekable, but it's a slow seek. if you're doing transcoding. But because you're doing transcoding, you probably need buffering, in which case users may want to control how big that buffer is.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that was
which gets
actually
to
another
Eric's point.
Yeah, I mean, I feel
about,
like
do we need options?
you really only need a like that. I guess if you go to UTF-8, you could need a 4-byte holdback, but it feels like you just need a holdback plus the make the rest of your encoding option go to the destination span/array. I don't think that it needs like a 4K buffer for doing the transcoding. I think that the target buffer is that buffer.
Depends on what kind of perf you want, especially if you want seeking and stuff.
Yeah, for read-only memory of char, it depends on whether or not we want as or to semantics. So, so yeah.
I mean, if you're reading the whole thing immediately, you're probably better off just greedily encoding it all. But yeah, it just depends on your scenario.
Yep. So yeah, I think there's still a whole lot here, and I think based on the layering thing that if it came down to a vote, that the votes would tabulate as Mr. Halter votes from read-only sequence, and everyone else votes as stream. But that's just my guess. So
yeah, it's not the end of the world.
So I think we would vote
pretty nuanced.
This is the correct direction for this transformation, and these are the correct directions for these transformations, and that the line was right there. But yeah.
Also, just to make sure, then for the from methods, did we agree that the naming was okay?
No.
Just I want to make sure.
We did not discuss the specific methods here, just how we feel about the from and to directions.
So now the conclusion is
it's coming back to API.
Yeah, there is no conclusion. We're not done.
Sorry, we tried. I was hoping to get.
But I mean, about the layering, that's how we are grouping them. Like,
assuming
the final answer there.
That, so again, the last point here, we didn't really discuss. Would we rather just make string stream a public type? Assuming we want to keep the types hidden and we go with static froms, then these are probably the buckets. That string and memory are froms, or are static froms, and other things are instance as's or twos. Whether they're extension methods or or actual instance methods depends on the type. For read-only sequence, we would specialize so it'll be an extension method. But yes, we didn't discuss from read-only data versus from writable data. We didn't really discuss the encoding, the seekability, right. We've talked about that these are problems, but we didn't come to conclusions.
And when this comes back, we may want to consider whether memory stream needs new constructor overloads. Right now, memory stream only wraps a byte array. And with these APIs, we will need some kind of stream type, even if internal, that can wrap a memory of byte array, or just memory of byte. In which case, we might just want to update memory of stream to wrap memory of byte. That way, it can be the type that works with all the datas.
David?
We did that 2 years ago. Well, I did that. Turns out that the spawn property was actually hidden perf in small buffer cases. So it was not worthwhile adding a new constructor overload to memory stream. We could try again, definitely, but in that case, that's how it ended up. It's in a PR.
Yeah, I think based on the perf previously saying that we weren't willing to accept the perf hit of doing the unification, I think we'll end up with internal class memory stream.
It's unfortunate that we wouldn't have a public type for users. I would think we could avoid the perf hit there though by having, because memory stream is unsealed, we could have memory stream and have an internal array memory stream and memory stream that derive from memory stream. And then we could have a static create method instead of a new constructor that takes memory and
But-
have that all work.
But because memory stream already has constructors and is constructible, and if you give it an array, it can give you back the array. Like, I think that means that it is the array memory stream, and we could extend it with memory stream, but at that point it's
Oh.
overriding all the virtuals and not really sharing anything.
Does it memory give you an API to give you the original array if you gave it one? Like,
Yeah, but we
Can't
need
you
to
use
ask,
that?
was I given that as an array that I'm supposed to give back, or was I given it as a slice, or was I right? Like, it gets complicated. Like, we
Yeah.
need a Boolean to track, did you call it from the constructor that we can give back the array? Which I actually think we have
Which-
already, is bool, do I give this array back?
doesn't sound like a blocker. Yeah, and I mean, honestly, I'm even coming around to maybe the string stream. Like, I guess you could have the encoding property on there,
Yeah.
which could be somewhat useful.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Again, I think we could talk ourselves hoarse and probably never be fully happy with what we have, but starting from the perspective of what would we do for binary data, I think we're happy with what we did there. What would we do for stream or for string? We were not happy with it being that same parity, so we agree that there's a impedance mismatch here and that's fine. So I do think we agreed on something. I do think that this has moved.
Progress.
Um,
All right.
We don't necessarily know how we feel about this type, but we have moved.
Yeah, and I'm like not gonna block it or any, like I'm not, it's not my preference as stream, but like I'd rather have it than not have it.
Yeah,
like,
so I did write down this as stream is not decided. It's a placeholder of showing that we're okay with them not being the same.
all right.
All right. We have negative 22 minutes. Does anybody have anything else they'd like to add?
Let's take a win where we can pretend we have one. No, this looks, I do think there's some real progress. Hopefully we can approve this next time. I think the questions that you put in the bullet points make sense.
Yeah, I think next time we get down to the nitty gritty of the seekable and non-seekable and how do we want the individual items to work. So,
Mhm.
all right. And well, with internal naming is easier because we don't have to be happy with it. So memory stream is probably what it'll be if it's internal. At least if I wrote it, it would be. I'd giggle. I'd hate it, but I'd giggle. At public, it gets harder. All right, so once again, I am going to mark this as needs work just so it shows up in the minutes, because if it doesn't change, it doesn't show up in the minutes. And then I'll flip it back to ready for review because we didn't really change anything other than I think we're suggesting that direction for the extension method, but that's not decided. All right. And with that, thanks everyone for joining us online. There's a lot of scroll back on this conversation. So we all feel passionately. It would be better if we all passionately felt the same thing, but we all feel passionately, and that's what debate is for. So see you next Tuesday at our same .NET time on our same .NET channel. Until then, au revoir.